Obviously, Happy New Year with an R at the end of it. That was my R joke to start with. I'm going to turn off the transcription so I don't see what I am saying because that's awful. So, yeah, Happy New Year. Welcome to Coffee and Code. Definitely see, obviously, a bunch of people do it. Do tell your friends about it. I know there's been some issues with the sign up process, but I think it's a little bit clunky for sure, but it seems to be working. So that's the main thing. And it's from our side, it's really relatively admin free. So hopefully that will be better. It's just a case of remembering to go in and book them all up, I guess. And I will probably try to send out some, I don't know. I mean, obviously, hopefully everybody's on Slack, and I'll try to put reminders out on Slack. But yeah, do get those out there. So, yeah, nice to see everybody. I also put something in the NHS DNA newsletter soon, and I don't know. We're trying to maybe. It'd be really good if we can get some feedback. So again, might do a bit of if anybody just wants to write a couple of paragraphs about what's great and what's not so great, or maybe we could put another survey together or something. And again, just to kind of try to give me some direction would be really awesome. Otherwise, you'll just get the same old rambling, random nonsense. But you're here, so maybe you like that. Who knows? So there's a couple of things. We've got Michael who has to shoot off at past, so going to be very mindful get him up on stage as quickly as possible. He's got an update on the Office 365 package and sort of utilization of that. Admittedly, that is mainly focused at NHS England people, but hopefully he can help non-NHS England people in order to whack their IT departments into shape. I'm going to do a very, very quick demo on Shiny Assistant for if anybody hasn't seen that yet, because I found it the other day and it's just mind blowing. And then I'm going to do a bit of a repo on some imputed values and bits and pieces. So, and then probably at the end, we probably have some time for sort of any other business and general community updates, if that's okay. As always, do feel free to put questions in the chat and whatever. And again, if anybody's got anything they want to sort of bring up, then please do so. Otherwise, I will hand over to Michael. Thank you very much, Michael.
Hi everyone, thanks Simon. Yeah, so as Simon mentioned, this is going to be a quick whistle-stop tour through some of the functionality of the Microsoft 365R package. Long-standing Coffee and Code members will know that I've got a piece of work where what we want to do is extract attachments from emails and process them and then store the data from them. And we've known for a long time that Microsoft 365R could do that, but we haven't had the permissions for the app that is maintained within the tenants to be able to actually use that functionality. Somehow or other, I think basically by being in the right place at the right time over the Christmas period, I've managed to get those permissions added to the app and also at the same time make it easier for NHS England people to get access to the app and be able to use this package. So Simon and I had a quick chat and thought it would be worth kind of showing off a little bit about what the package can do, and then we'll take it from there. If you're not in NHS England, it will slightly depend on how your IT department have set up access to that app. All of the permissions in the app are delegated ones, so there shouldn't be any security risks with being granted access to the app. But you might just need to go through a little bit of pain in pushing your IT services to actually let you use this. So I'm going to hide my Teams screen because I've got my script for what I'm going to do on my other monitor, and I'm going to try and do a live code along. But I have got a backup if I need it, but it will mean that I can't see what you guys are doing. So if you've got any questions or want any clarifications or anything, just interrupt me and tell me to shut up and ask the question, and I will do my best to answer. Right. Can you all see that?
Yeah. Is there any chance you could just make the text a little bit bigger?
Yes, of course I can.
It's just for the recording and all of that. Excellent. Thank you.
Right. So I'm just going to quickly load in library 3 packages. So the top one is the Microsoft365R package, and then the other two are just things. Tidyverse is the Tidyverse, and OpenXLSX is my preferred package for kind of handling Excel files, which is what we're going to be doing a bit of. So just to say, and this is this is a package that's really helpful with this. So what Microsoft 365R does when you first try to connect to anything is it tries to authenticate your access using your normal authentication method. So quite often it will load up a web page and ask you to log into your account and all of that stuff. This package is one that smooths that out. So the HTTP package will store your credentials and then will automatically reuse those credentials the next time. So you won't see any of that today, because I hope you won't see any of that today, because all of my credentials are already stored somewhere on my laptop, but I can't remember where it is. And so I couldn't find them to delete them before this to show you what happens. But once you've authenticated the first time, if you've got this package installed, you don't need to library it, but it should just kind of work in the background with the Microsoft 365R package to smooth all of that out. So I'm going to do two things today. I'm going to show you a little bit about some stuff that happens with interacting with SharePoint, and then I'm going to hopefully have time to show you what happens with the emails as well. So let's start off by connecting to a corporate SharePoint site. So this is our team's kind of SharePoint site, and I'm just specifying that it's in the NHS tenant because that's where we are now. There was a version of this in the old NHS England tenant, but obviously that's all being closed down bit by bit. So you'll see that it's kind of giving me the message that says that it's loading my login. Because I've been kind of setting up for this, I'm already authenticated, but you might see as we go through them later on, it might come up with always refreshing your authentication. That's what the HTTP package is doing in the background. If I didn't have that installed, it would have pulled up a web page, like I've said, and asked me to authenticate. So you can see also in the environment, we've now got a SharePoint site object that's been created, and we can, within that, we can kind of say mount it as a drive, a little bit like you would for like mapping drives when we used to have to do that sort of thing. And so now we've got the drive of that SharePoint site mapped to an object, and then we can start to have a look at what the properties of that drive are. So it gives us information about when it was created, what it's called, where it is, the URL to access it, who the last person to modify that particular location was, who the owner is, all sorts of information like that are in there. And we can also, because now it's the drive part where all the files are, we can also list out the files that are in there. Now this is the root of the of this particular site, and so there's only one folder in here. So there's only one drive in this location. It's called PPMQ. And then we can start to do things like navigate through those folders. So if we get, the command is get item, and because you can use the same command to either go into a different directory or to select a file within that directory. So we've now got a folder that we've called, that we've effectively gone into that PPMQ folder. So if we list the items that are in that folder, we get a much longer list of things that are in there. Most of them are like subfolders within the PPMQ folder, but you can start to see there's some other files that are stored in this location. So I'm going to go straight to a folder that we've got set up for my main team that's just checking whether people can access this using this package or not. So I'm going to load another test folder and show you what's in there. So you can see that in here we've got 4 files, and if I go to that particular location in SharePoint, you can also see that we've got the same 4 files in SharePoint itself. So within here, I've created this test file for Coffee and Code. And in the same way as I can get the item to go to that folder, I can select that file within that folder. And so now we've got test file. Now this is a XLSX file, so it's an Excel file rather than a CSV, which the Microsoft 365R package does have a load data frame function within it, which is designed to try and allow you to directly load from using the package, directly load data into the environment from an object like this. The problem is that it's designed to work with flat files, and so Excel, when you try and load an Excel file like this, it doesn't quite work. And so the way to work, the way I'm working around this, I'm sure there's more than one way because it's R, so there's always more than one way to sort this out. But the way I'm doing this is I'm creating a temporary file using the temp file function from base R, and I'm saying that temporary file's got an XLSX extension on it. And so what this does is it creates a temporary, like, you know, the old temporary files you sometimes used to see floating around in folders. It creates one of those for R to use that's stored as a permanent one. And then what you can do is, rather than trying to load the data directly into R, you can download that file to that location. So what I'm saying, rather than try and load the data from it, I'm saying download it to this temporary file and overwrite the temporary file if you need to, if there's something already in it. And so now this temporary file is that XLSX file that was in the thing. So we can use what your preferred flavor of Excel loading. Your preferred flavor of Excel loading function to load from the temporary file the data into the environment. So now we've got the data that was contained in the sheet for that from that Excel file loaded into R as a data frame. And so now you can do whatever you want to do with that data. So let's just, for the sake of showing that you can do this sort of thing, let's just very quickly add another column. So now I've got another object that's exactly the same, but I've added a test upload column to the data. So, you know, in a normal workflow at this point, you'd be doing whatever analysis you wanted to do, writing tables, making graphics, adding to your file. And then when you finished, what you'd want to do is you want to upload that file back to, you want to upload that data back to SharePoint, wherever you might want to put it. So to do that, I'm rewriting the temporary file with the change data. So that temporary file is now the data that we've changed. And then I'm going to upload the temporary file to the test folder. So this is the test folder up here. So so you could put it wherever you want in SharePoint just by defining which folder you want to put it in. I'm going to upload the temporary file and I want it to be called upload test. It's uploaded. So if I run that and then go back into SharePoint and refresh, you'll see that now we've got the upload test file in the folder. If I open it, you'll see it's the data that we modified within our uploaded directly to SharePoint. everyone still with me?
Yeah, yeah.
So is that down? Is that down? So that's a little bit of how to mess around with SharePoint using Microsoft 365R. I really need to acknowledge Chi Hin's support in helping me work out how to do all of that. So yeah, thanks very much. Couldn't have got this far without the help. But then, as I've mentioned, we were hitting this brick wall where what we really want to do is we want to be able to mess around with emails in corporate mailboxes in particular, and the permissions just weren't there. And so just this last week, those permissions were finally granted to us. And so now we can start to do things where we can look at things that are happening in mailboxes. So I'm just, didn't copy again. What's going on? I'm just, to start with, going to very quickly have a look in my own mailbox. So this is my mailbox. It is a hot mess. So apologies for anyone who likes a nice tidy inbox, because I do not have one of those. I've hidden it, so just to avoid trying to give people too much of the ick. One of the things that I found quite interesting with this is, in contrast to the way that we've had to mess around with SharePoint up here, where you had to pass a file path, and also in contrast to the kind of the previous way I was doing this, where we had to provide a path to the folder within the mailbox that we wanted. If you just have a look at the personal mailbox and list folders, you get literally a list of every single folder that is in that, whether it's a child of another folder or not. It's literally every single folder. So even if it's a folder that's inside another folder in your Outlook kind of user interface, you can just literally tell R that you want the folder, whatever folder that you want. So it could be 3 deep, but you only have to say get that folder name, and it will know that that's the folder that you're looking for within that mailbox. So in this particular test folder, get it up so you can see. So this is the test folder. You can see that I've got an email in here that I was testing with last night after I had the nod from Simon that he wanted me to do this. I thought I'd better see what I can, a little bit of what I can do with these emails. So this is an email that I sent myself to test whether or not I can move emails in Outlook. So it's there. And then if I tell it that I want a destination folder, which is a copy of the test folder, then I can start to have a look at what's going on in these folders. So there's no emails currently in the copy at the moment. It's just to kind of prove that. There they are. It's done. Obviously going too fast for. So what I want to know is, I want to know what emails are there in the source folder. And so, I mean, if you just run the code itself, it will kind of list out the email, and it kind of gives you sort of some preliminary information about what's in the email. Whereas if you assign it to an object, you get the list, which has all of that same information in it, kind of, and lots of other stuff. So I know that we know that there's one email in there because it's a list of one. And we can then start to take a look at some of the properties of that email. So if I say I want, for the first email in the emails, I want to know the received date time of that email, will tell me that. And obviously you can assign that to an object in R as usual. If you want to know what the subject is, you can do that. if you want to know what the email address of the sender was, you can do that. So this is in the properties, who was of the sender, what's their email address, and that tells you that it was me because I sent it to myself. And then you can also do, you can do all sorts of stuff. You can reply to the email and pass information in about what you want the reply to be, all sorts of fun stuff like that. But just to kind of demonstrate here that it is actually working, if I say that I want to move it to the destination folder, and then I bring those back up again, you can see that it's moved that email from the test folder and it's put it in the copy folder. And then just because it's very similar messing around with attachments, but just because that's, like something that people want to do, I thought I would very quickly, because I'm aware of the time, show you what happens when you start to do. So this was my personal email address that I linked to for this one here. This time I'm linking to one of our corporate ShareBox mailboxes. And then within that, there's a folder that's actually about 3 deep in a chain of folders that we've got that's called for checking. And this is the folder that we put our emails in that we're wanting to process anyway. So this is actually data that we will be wanting to process at some point. And if I list the emails that are in there, you can see that we've got 3 emails this time. I had a look at which was the kind of easiest one for this, and so I'm just going to choose the second one. So the email that I'm going to pull data from for this one is the second one, and we can have a look at that and list the attachments that are in it. And you can see here, like for instance, we've got a classic. There's a picture at the bottom of the email, and it's seen by the email as being an attachment, even though it displays it inside the email. And then we've got 2 actual attachments, one of which is an email attached within the email, and the other one is the actual template that we would want to process with our data. So if I add them to an object, and then what I've done is I've kind of done a very quick validation. So for example, we know from this that the first email is an XLSX file. So what I'm saying here is if the name of the first attachment ends with the XLSX, then download it to the temporary file. Otherwise, print that it's not an XLSX file. So we know for the first attachment that it's not, so that's what it's done. Whereas for the second one, we know that it is. So we can see that that's actually now loaded that data, and then now it's in the temporary file. We can treat it exactly the same way as we did with the temporary file that we did when we were doing the SharePoint one. So we can have a look at the sheet names of that, and you can see that one of these is the data sheet. So we can read in the data sheet to the environment, and then again from that point onwards, you can just do whatever you want to it and put it wherever you want and load it, change it, edit it, whatever you want to do. So there we go. That is a whistle-stop tour through some of what Microsoft 365R can do.
That's really cool, Michael. And yeah, I think just your final comment there, that it's just scratching the surface, really.
Yeah.
The other bits, obviously, it's worth mentioning as well. So Office 365 also chats nicely with Teams. I remember having to play with it a long time ago, and you can get it to send Teams messages out as well. So, you know, if you wanted to ping somebody an urgent thing, if something had happened, you can, you know, you don't have to do it via email. You can just send directly through Teams messages and bits and pieces. I don't know how it works with other things within Teams, whether it can access things like meetings and stuff. I've no idea. Or groups, I don't know, but I did manage to send a meet. I'm trying to remember how I did it now. I've lost the code, but I did manage to send a message from me to a specific group, so it is possible. But yeah, I mean, definitely, obviously, about automated reading of emails, especially if you've got like obviously data collections which come in via email, just being able to sort of pick the right email and just have that all up as an automated process is really cool. And also, you know, potentially the magic stuff to send stuff out. Michael does have to shoot off in a minute. I think we've answered most questions as they've gone along, but if there's any other comments. Matt's just come up with one. Have you considered putting the code in a package, Michael? A lot of people find it useful.
Not yet. I suspect
Okay.
something like that will come though.
Yeah. I mean, at the very least, obviously, we will be twisting our Michael's arm to stick it into a repo, and we can add it to the sort of the fines, as it were, and
Yeah,
so we
we were
can help
talking
sort of
about
collate
this
those.
yesterday.
Yeah.
The only challenge with that is that obviously with corporate mailboxes and stuff, it's very difficult to find one that everyone's got access to. So
Yeah.
I will try and put something similar to what I did really in a repo, but you will have to find your own email addresses and SharePoint sites and things to point it to.
And appreciate mileage will vary depending on how your IT is set up as well. Somebody's already from outsiders, potentially, you know, give us a shout and we can at least hopefully tell you what needs, you know, what permissions are needed, so you can go and talk to your IT guys about what they need to do. Because I think half the battle is trying to find the right IT person who knows what needs to be pressed and where. So yeah, that's really cool. Any other last questions for Michael? Otherwise, a massive thank you. I'm just going to do so this is my absolutely in 5 or less than 5 minutes shiny assistant. I don't know if you've seen this, but this is well, it's just basically witchcraft. So let's do a Google for shiny assistant. Takes this shiny assistant, which brings up this page, and there's just loads and loads and loads and loads and loads and loads of stuff in it, which makes no sense. But what you want is this little button at the bottom, which brings you up to a shiny assistant, which just brings up this page. You go, okay, that's great. So please build me an app that shows Star Wars data in graphs for various features. Also add slides and drop downs. One word, I don't know, in order to filter the data. Yeah, that seems quite a thing. So, and I then just press return and just be prepared to be blown away. That's written all code. It's now just going to run the code. Obviously, it's got to load in a bunch of stuff. I mean, it's not, I mean, you know, it's taking at least a couple of seconds here. This is, you know, crazy amount of time. It is still going, don't you worry.
A couple of seconds.
I mean, obviously, I could have
3 weeks.
I could have done this manually loads quicker.
Reading
obviously.
it several books.
Yeah, this.
And we're going, oh, it's a couple of seconds.
I think any of us could have written this freehand so much quicker. I mean, goodness knows what packages it's pulling in. But obviously,
all of these.
Obviously it's downloading tidyverse, so it's downloading a bunch of packages. Well, you know, we'll let it download a few things. That's fine. No problem with that. I've seen people know that Star Wars is just a package or a data set that's just built into tidyverse. So rather than sort of feeding it in any particular data, my goodness me, it's doing loads of stuff. And obviously, because this is going to be AI, obviously I've done here's one I prepared earlier, test version, but I've just done it live, so I've got no idea what it's going to come out with. So I think it's managed to sort all that out, and there we go. Let's move this over. We now have a shiny dashboard where I can do.
We're redundant, really, aren't we?
I mean, just a little bit scary, really. How bonkers is that? Yeah, I know everybody just seeing like the shocked faces, and I 100% agree. So yeah, I mean, it's pretty bulk. Yeah, guess you could ask it to do different packages, whatever. But obviously, just out of the tin, if you just want to go, please write me a package or an app that shows how to do filters. But obviously, it gives you all the code, and then you can work out, hopefully, then retrospectively work out how it's done. I mean, it's not written a lot of code, to be honest, in it all. And I don't know why it's got. I mean, a lot of those packages are probably just bits that are in tidyverse, because I think it's probably not. I don't know what it's done. Anyway, I can't see it's used half of those packages anyway. But hopefully you can just agree that, yeah, we're all going to be out of a job soon. So that's nice to know.
But we're not going to be. We're not going to
No.
be. So what you need to do is to put it into Golem, which is the next. You have to be one step ahead of AI.
Okay.
So you take that code and you put it into a package-looking kind of modularized Golem, which means that then you can replicate your shiny dashboards over and over again. Because I don't like building dashboards, but I do like building packages, and Golem's like a happy medium for me to get into it. So,
but as a space of, if you are starting to develop within Shiny, it's really cool.
yeah, well, that's the thing. I don't know how to do that bit, so I'd go to this and get the shiny bit, and then put it into Golem.
At least you can get it on that, and then I could rip that bit out and shove it into my bit. And so a little bit of news on Shiny and the FDP. So NHS England has now got some R Connect licenses within FDP. We haven't quite got to the stage of doshing them out or whatever, but they do exist. So there is potential for using R Shiny within the FDP. Well, that's R Connect. So not only has it got Shiny, once you've got your FDP space set up, it gives you an R Studio version, which connects all to your data sets really, really nicely. You can schedule reports, you can publish Shiny apps, and you can also publish sort of markdown apps as well, and they would have all URL, and then people can access them from outside using their usual FTP credentials. So potentially amazing. I think if you are a non-NHS England person, you would have to procure your own Shiny license and go through that process and have a chat with Palantir about how you actually get it turned on for your instance. And I will hopefully find out some more about that and let you know, because I don't know right now. Okay, there's that bit. Any questions on that bit, or any more just general wows? I mean, I was blown away when, I must admit, I don't know if Seb's here today. I think he's on leave. Seb Fox showed me, and I was one thing. So credit to Seb. Right, let me do the next little session, which was sort of I'd say live coding. It's not live coding, it's dead coding, because here's one I prepared earlier. So, but I will run through it. And this was about imputing missing values. Let's just get rid of all that stuff because it's got spoilers in it. Right. So I am going to use a bunch of packages. Obviously, tidyverse is tidyverse, zoo, and forecast. So I am going to start with making a little data frame, which is, if we look at it, just some dates and some values. Okay, so hopefully nothing massively exciting there that you've never seen before. And if we do a very, very simple plot based on it as it is, ggplot does this very, very nice thing in that it kind of fills in our gaps with lines. It doesn't realize that we've got sort of null values, and as far as a plot is concerned, it will fill in the gaps, which is good, sort of. but not necessarily if we actually need to work out what those middle values are. And obviously there's different ways. We will shout out to the, I know Zoe's probably itching to shout out about the imputation values in the whatever Turing way, which we will come back. So get that link ready, Zoe. So what I'm going to do now is, if we go back to our data, just have a look at it. Obviously, we can see that May and June are just missing from our data set, which again is really common. So rather than just having a null or nothing there, those are just not included in our data set whatsoever. So what I want to do is just expand my data set and include those missing dates. So I'm going to do that, which is this little bad boy here. And now I've got my full date range, and then where I've got gaps, it's obviously pulled through an NA, which is basically, I've just made another sequence of dates and I've just joined it on there. I could do like a cross join or some other way, but that was the quickest and dirtiest way I could come up with it this morning. So that's great. So we can see that. But now if we plot it, we get this, which obviously, because now we've got proper nulls in our data set, ggplot acts a bit differently and just put gaps in our plot, which is a bit annoying and ugly and horrible and probably not what we want. So if you've got if you have got data sets, and quite often you might have, I don't know, different values in different columns, and there might be a value in one of the columns but not in the other. So quite often you might have something like this occur. So how do we kind of fill in those gaps, or how can we sort of impute them? So really sort of basic way we can do it, we could just replace all the gaps with zeros and just assume that it's a 0. So we can use the tidyr replace NA, so we that can sit nicely within a mutate, and we can mutate our values and replace any values which are nulls, NAs with a 0. So if we do that, we can see our data NA, we've now got zeros in, but when we plot it, we get that, which may or may not be useful. Again, it totally depends on what you're trying to show. Sometimes, if you just want to show people, hey guys, you haven't submitted, or we haven't got data for these months, that might be useful. I don't know. Sometimes you want to go, well, if they haven't put any data in, we're going to assume it's 0. So that might be useful. We can also use some other sort of basic imputation methods, like replacing the missing values with the mean value, which we could do with replace NA, and instead of just implicitly putting a 0 in, we can say we want it to be the mean. However, obviously, always remember to put your NA/RM equals true, because we know there's nulls in there, and if you don't put it in there, it's going to replace everything with an NA, which is not what you want, and definitely had me scratching my head for 2 minutes when I was writing this, going, what's going on? Which is not so good. So if we replace all our NAs with the mean, we get this, which is, that's kind of, maybe that's useful. I think if I was plotting it, I would possibly tag my imputed values and put them in a different color and put a little caption saying, these are imputed, or something along those lines. Obviously we're R, so we can play with medians, and we can do exactly the same with medians if we so wished, which, I don't know, can we see any? Oh yeah, there is a microscopic difference if we sort of flick between our mean and medians, but not particularly. Then we can start using some other bits and pieces. So we can use, from Zoo, has a NA lock function, which is last object carried forward, which basically says, instead of taking the mean, you just use the last value and then put that in the space. So the last known value just sort of carry forward. So fill in any gaps with the last known value, which is quite a good way. I mean, I'm guessing if you're looking at a sort of a time series and expect something to be seasonal, well, I don't know, sort of reasonable, that might be another way you would look at it. With this particular data set, obviously, I've just put in random numbers, so maybe that's not so good, but that is another way of doing it. Another thing we can do, what's also interesting, obviously, is, by the way, when we actually look at the data, we have actually sort of filled in those numbers within our data set as well. So it's not just on the chart here, we have actually got them within our data set. And again, it might be worth just sort of flagging those as imputed values. We can also do a linear interpretation, which basically takes the last known value, the next known value, and draw a line in between them, which does this. So yeah, so basically where we've got these gaps, it just draws a straight line between the last value and the one we did, which is very much like the first graph that we had with the, you know, the ggplot, except now we've got calculated values for these gaps, and we've actually sort of got dots for them. And then we look in our data set, which is here, we do actually have those values for, you know, for each of those steps, which again could be really, really useful if we're trying to, you know, to pull out some other bits and pieces, especially sort of in a time series, or if we're trying to find a better average over the time period. Because again, if you've got missing values, your average or whatever, if you're doing something like that, is going to have less power and not be so good. So if you have some really, you want to be fancy, then you can get into some other more cleverer ways. And this is more a case if you've got other data, and you want to be able to impute values based on that sort of other data. So this is more like a machine learning method, where basically we've got a load of other data, so therefore can we predict what the missing value will be. So we can use the library MICE, which stands for multivariate imputation var chained equations, as I'm sure somebody was about to shout out. But basically this uses a method where we can try to guess our values based on the other things that we know. So if we know the person's age, gender, and, you know, diagnosis and what they were admitted for and blah 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 blah, it would compare it to other patients in that kind of who meet similar sort of things and try to come up with a value that sort of matches. So instead of just looking at the value, that single value, it tries to look at, you can give it as many features as you like, and then it tries to sort of create a value from that. So I'm going to use the MT-CARS data set, just because it's a data set with a bunch of different stuff in it, and hopefully everybody's sort of vaguely aware of it, rather than using any sort of patient-eat stuff. And I am going to just add a random date to it just to make it a time series, although I don't think I end up using it in the end. And then we can plot that. And at the moment, yeah, that's what the miles per gallon looks like, which is what we're going to do over our time series, which obviously makes no sense as far as data is concerned, but that's what we're doing. So I am going to add in artificially some nulls into my data set. So I'm just going to remove some of those MPGs and see if we can work it out from the other bits of data that we have. So if we run that and just have a quick look at our data just to confirm, as you can see now, I've now got some gaps in my miles per gallon. So we are going to, what are we going to do? We're just going to run that again. Yeah, obviously we can see now we've got some gaps, which is cool. So we are going to use a mice function, and mice function is quite nice. It allows you to try various different methods in one go, and this is very much just using it out of the box and without any sort of hyperparameter training or whatever. This is just purely a function out of the box, and we're going to try impute some values for our miles per gallon, which it does there. And then on my mice imputed, I'm just going to add in the actuals again, so we can do that comparison to say, well, this is what it predicted, this is what the actual was, and run that one. And let's have a look. And I didn't get around to actually plotting it again. So obviously we've got a gap here where we thing, and we got 3 different methods. So the actual answer was 21.4, and well, depending on which we go, the lasso is pretty damn close to the right answer. We've got this one. The actual answer was 14.7. It's come up with 11.8. Yeah, ballpark maybe. And likewise here, the actual was 15.2. I mean, these 2 methods have got it spot on. Oh no, they haven't. 15.5. I'm reading the wrong one. Actually, and yeah, again, 16.1. Not a world off. So again, quite a nice way of, if you have got missing data and you just want to, try to understand potentially fill in those gaps, that's the way of doing that. And also just going to run through Miss Forest, which is a lovely name. I love, who doesn't have Miss Forest? It sounds like a nice cuddly old teacher, doesn't it? Miss Forest is basically a method which uses a random forest to try again do exactly the same, impute those missing values. So if we run that one through, it will run a random forest model, as you can see, super fast. And then add in my actuals again and look at our imputed. So this is the actuals, and this is what is imputed. So it's guessed 18.6. We've got 21.4. Where are we? Got one there, 12.2, and it's 14.7, 16.4, 15.3. Not great. And, there are loads of ways to test how good it is. We could do sort of mean absolute errors and various bits and pieces, and we could actually give it some sort of significance about how close we are. But considering the, where are we? Range of MT cars mpg. So considering it ranges from 10 to 33, they're only a couple out, and they're in the right sort of ballpark. So, generally, and considering it's a model with only, was it 32 observations, that's pretty damn good. Better than I could do off the top of my head, I'm sure. So just to show, there's some, really nice, simple, and like I say, this is purely just using them straight out of the box. The Miss Forest imputed, the imputed Miss Forest command, and that's just using it straight out of the box. There are ways of, if people have them sort of random forests, you can increase the trees and iterations and yada yada yada. And it was, you can make it much cleverer, and you can make it do far more iterations. And again, if you've got more data, then it's obviously going to train better as well. Cool. Any questions or comments? Or
I shared the link to Turing Way, but also
excellent.
Matt shared one from ONS as well, which is a technical review of methods for missing data.
Okay.
So those are both featuring. In fact, the Turing Way does have links to Python and R. So people's blogs about how to use mice.
Nice.
Yeah, but it doesn't have code, so it's not like a technical manual. And the same for the ONS one as well. I think it's about the methods and when to use them, which is really useful.
Yeah, 100%. They can potentially be a force of danger if if needs to be. Let me see, have I got Miss Forest imputed? So I put the dates back in again. No, I didn't. I don't know. I was just going to do the chart and try to do a comparison if we can see visually the imputed ones, whether they work, but I didn't. Obviously, I ran out of time. Maybe I should do things a little bit earlier, but I will do that, and I'll chuck it all in a repo and go and have a look at it, because I think that's quite fascinating. I mean, the Miss Forest bit, or just the lasso things, and the other, sorry, the mice. Again, these are not particularly well trained. These are just using the standard default positions. You could take an average of those 3 different methods and make your own sort of ensemble model if that you think that will work better. But just out of the box, I think they came within the right ballpark, which is really quite impressive. with no sort of major hyperparameter tweaking and all that kind of nonsense, which we get into.
The
Okay.
other thing to say is a shout out for accessibility, because when you refer to using colours, I think it's a good idea to show the differences when you've done not with the mice, but if you do use colour on its own, bear in mind that if people can't see that colour or visibility, that's a good word, new visibility difficulties people may have, also kind of combine it, as you did say, with text or maybe like a symbol difference. But I would do a shout out again verbally for the recording for Government Analysis Functions Accessibility series of helpful advice for things like spreadsheets and data visualizations and all sorts of things, because they do some good work.
100%. Yeah, that's a really good one. And again, that would be really good for us to, I don't know. Well, I don't want to copy their homework, but have sort of
definitely copy.
I mean, have we got stuff in sort of our functions, etc., that do that kind of thing? I don't know.
Don't know. That's a good question.
But if anybody has, that would be a really good thing to start building up and sort of sharing. I know a couple of months ago we had Will and Ruby talking about obviously the project they've done around sort of visualization. So it'd be really good to feed into that, I guess, and sort of build that in there as well. So that would be cool. We've got about 5 minutes left. Are there any community updates, Zoe?
Yeah, I'll share in the link, the chat links. We have this month a Q&A with the POSIT team on the Quarto. So come along with your questions. We're going to have a Slido that's available to us about a week before. I'm going to ask for people to give questions. I suppose even if you can't make it, if you want your question to be involved in there, please do submit things about all things Quarto. But I'm assuming that given the people here and how we use it is probably around reports. So just chuck your questions our way or come along and ask them in advance or during. So we're going to do that through pre-ticks like these coffee and coding is done as well. So it's restricted on people who have public sector, government, academic and charity email addresses. And if you have one of those and it's not recognized, let me know, because I'm building up the list. And we're also going to always be on the lookout, and so it will be picking up from February, people for workshops, training, webinars, anything that you want to do to show to the community, or even here at Coffee and Coding.
Yeah, you
like
know
5 minutes.
You know how desperate I am constantly for people to come up with stuff, because so please, I think people really love to see what other people are working on, how they're tackling stuff. Don't feel that it has to be a finished project or anything.
And
Otherwise,
if you want
you'll
us to switch off the recording, we can do. That's fine. I mean, we tend to record it just generally because it's usually like magic is shown, like this should just be renamed to the magic session, but just get used to it and do that with our events, and we can always just have people come along and switch off their recordings, but you'll get used to it. Simon and I just babble like we're doing now.
Hopefully this is a safe space. Yeah, please come and rescue us from just blabbling at everybody, for sure. So please, anything you're working on, really, really good, or just get some advice on, I've got it this far, how can we just change it or whatever. Do shout. Otherwise, I'm just going to go through the list and random pick on people. So, oi, what have you done? So, to come and present at the magic session, the bar is pretty high. No, it's not.
I agree, but I mean, this is what happened. This was not sort of like arranged, was it? But I mean, there was magic just being shown. Mind blowing.
Well, to be fair, Shiny Assistant, I didn't write Shiny Assistant, just for the record. That wasn't me. That was definitely stole it from POSIT. I don't think we can wreck that, but you can definitely get my shonky code and and any shonky code that anybody's got, it's got to be good.
We should have a session of just show us your shonky code. There is an HDR UK event as well that's in conjunction with Strategy Unit on failure that's coming up. I'll share that in the link. I've just got to dig it out. So, we celebrate those too. I mean, that's how we learn. Still failing a lot. So absolutely. Magic failure.
Yeah. So other than that, but also, like I said, we really, really get to get some feedback about what kind of things people want to see, or I don't know. It's very tricky, and I guess some of it is just that random thing. What somebody showed me a couple of months ago suddenly has then come up a couple of months ago, and it's like, oh, I remember that, and that in of itself just builds that knowledge of the art of the possible is really good. So happy to do that, or yeah, just see what people have got. But yes, do shout out more. Do shut me up from talking, and that'd be great. Other than that, what I did say, the R, and we're also going to sort of explore some more links with the Python community as well. So they are looking at doing a Python copy and code as well. So if you are sort of dual linguistic, I don't know what's the word. Bilingual, that's the word I was looking for. If you are bi or trilingual or whatever, yeah, do give us a shout, and we'll see what we can do. So yeah, and well, we'll let you know some more about those details when they come up. Other than that, we're pretty much on time, so I think we call it. Thank you all so very much, and don't forget to sign up, tell all your friends, and all that good stuff. Cheers all.